You've probably heard 100 versions of the same advice by now. Be confident, be alpha, don't chase, say less, act mysterious. And yet, despite all of that, you still find yourself wondering why some men seem to say almost nothing and still draw women in effortlessly, while others say all the right things and still get ignored. So let me be very clear with you from the start. It's not about memorizing lines. It's not about manipulation. And it's definitely not about pretending to be someone you're not. What actually makes a woman feel drawn to you deeply, almost involuntarily, is the emotional weight behind what you say, the identity you carry, and the subtle signals that tell her who you are without you having to prove it. I'm going to talk to you as a woman who understands how women think, feel, and react. Not the filtered version you see online, but the real, sometimes uncomfortable truth. And if you're willing to hear it, you'll start to notice that the words that create attraction aren't flashy or complicated. In fact, they're often simple, but they land differently because of the mindset behind them. Before we go further, I want you to keep an open mind. Some of what I say might challenge what you've been taught. That's intentional. Growth doesn't come from comfort. If you're serious about becoming the kind of man women feel naturally drawn to, not just temporarily impressed by, then stay with me. And if you want more of this kind of honest, unfiltered insight, make sure you subscribe and come back, because this is a conversation most men never get to hear. Let's begin. 1. You don't need her, you choose her. There is a very specific shift that happens in a woman's mind when she senses that you are not operating from need. It's subtle, but it's powerful. When you say something as simple as, "I enjoy spending time with you," it can either feel heavy and clingy or calm and grounded, depending on what she senses underneath it. And what she's really listening for is this: are you choosing her, or are you depending on her? Most men don't realize how transparent neediness is. It leaks through tone, timing, body language, and even silence. You can say all the right words, but if they're coming from a place of seeking validation, she feels it immediately. And the moment she feels responsible for your emotional state, attraction starts to fade. Not because she's cruel, but because attraction thrives on autonomy, not obligation. Now think about the opposite. Imagine a man who clearly has a full life, his purpose, his direction, his own standards, and he says, calmly and without pressure, "I like having you around." There's no desperation in it, no hidden plea, just a statement. That kind of energy is disarming because it tells her she's wanted, not needed. And those are two very different things. This idea goes back to something Epictetus emphasized constantly. Focus only on what is within your control. Your purpose, your behavior, your standards, that's yours. Whether a woman chooses you is not. And ironically, when you truly accept that, you become more attractive because you stop trying to control the outcome. So let me ask you something honestly. When you think about the woman you want, are you approaching her as an addition to your life or as the solution to your emptiness? Because she will feel the difference before you even say a word. And here's the truth most men avoid. Women don't resist confident words. They resist emotional pressure. If your words carry freedom, curiosity, and choice, they open doors. If they carry expectation and dependency, they close them just as quickly. 2. Say what you mean and mean what you say. There is something incredibly rare today, and that is a man whose words are aligned with his reality. You might think confidence is about bold statements or clever lines, but from a woman's perspective, confidence is consistency. It's when what you say matches how you behave over time, without fluctuation. Too many men try to impress through exaggeration or performance. They say things they think will make them more appealing, more interesting, more desirable. But what they don't understand is that women are constantly reading between the lines. It's not just about what you say, it's about whether it feels grounded in truth. When a man says, "I'll call you," and he doesn't, it seems small on the surface. But what she actually registers is unreliability. When a man says, "I'm not really into games," but his behavior is inconsistent, what she feels is confusion. And confusion erodes attraction faster than rejection ever could. Now contrast that with a man who speaks plainly and follows through. If he says, "I'm busy this week, but I'll reach out next week," and then he actually does, it creates a sense of stability. And stability, when paired with self-respect, is deeply attractive. Not boring, grounding. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the importance of being a person whose actions and words are in harmony, someone who does not waste energy pretending. That principle applies directly here. When you stop trying to craft the perfect thing to say and instead focus on being honest and consistent, your words gain weight, and weight is what makes them land. Let's make this practical. Instead of trying to impress, say something real. Instead of overpromising, be accurate. Instead of adjusting your words to what you think she wants to hear, ask yourself what you actually think and feel. That alone puts you ahead of most men. And here's the part you need to sit with. Do your words reflect your actual standards? Or are they shaped by your fear of losing her? Because if it's the second one, she will eventually feel that you're negotiating your identity for her approval. And nothing weakens attraction faster than that. A woman is not drawn to perfection. She is drawn to certainty, not arrogance, not dominance, but clarity. When you speak with clarity, even if your words are simple, they create a sense of trust. And trust is the foundation that attraction builds on. So the next time you're about to say something, pause for a moment and ask yourself, is this true? And will my actions back it up? Because if the answer is yes, then you don't need to say more. Your presence will do the rest. And if you've made it this far, understand this. What you're learning here isn't about tricks or shortcuts. It's about becoming the kind of man whose words carry meaning because they come from a place of strength, not insecurity. Stay with me, because what we're about to get into next will challenge you even more. 3. You don't chase clarity, you create it. One of the most common mistakes men make is asking questions they already feel uncertain about, hoping the woman will remove that uncertainty for them. Do you like me? Where is this going? Are you seeing someone else? On the surface, these seem like reasonable questions, but underneath them is something much heavier: hesitation, doubt, and a quiet request for reassurance. Now let me show you what happens on the other side of that. When you consistently look to her to define the connection, you place her in control of the emotional direction. And while that might seem harmless, it shifts how she perceives you. Instead of seeing a man who leads his own life and invites her into it, she begins to see someone waiting to be told where he stands. That's not attractive. Not because women want control, but because they want to feel that you know where you stand without needing constant validation. Creating clarity doesn't mean being rigid or overly serious. It means expressing your intentions without fear. For example, instead of asking, "What are we?" a man grounded in himself might say, "I enjoy spending time with you, and I'm interested in seeing where this can go." Do you see the difference? One is seeking an answer, the other is offering direction. Seneca often wrote about the discomfort of uncertainty and how most people rush to escape it. But the man who can sit in uncertainty without losing his composure becomes powerful, because he is not reactive. He is intentional. Let me ask you something you might not have considered. When you feel the urge to ask for clarity, is it because the situation truly requires it, or because you're uncomfortable not knowing how she feels about you? There's a difference. When your actions, your attention, and your words are consistent, clarity naturally forms over time. You don't have to force it. You don't have to interrogate it. You allow it to reveal itself, and that patience signals confidence in a way words never could. Women don't resist clarity. They resist pressure disguised as questions. If your communication feels like an attempt to lock something down too early, it creates tension. But if it feels like a natural expression of your interest, it creates space for her to lean in. So the next time you feel that urge to figure things out, shift your focus. Instead of asking where you stand, show where you stand. That alone changes everything. 4. You don't impress her, you reveal yourself. There's a quiet exhaustion that comes from trying to be impressive, always thinking about what to say next, how to appear more interesting, how to stand out. And the truth is, women can feel that effort, not the effort itself, but the intention behind it. When you're trying to impress, you're subtly placing her above you. You're signaling that her approval is something to be earned. And even if she doesn't consciously think about it, she feels the imbalance. Now compare that to a man who is simply expressing who he is. He shares his thoughts, his humor, his perspective, not to win her over, but because that's genuinely who he is. There's no performance in it. And that authenticity creates something far more compelling than any rehearsed line ever could. This doesn't mean you shouldn't put your best foot forward. It means your best foot forward should still be your real foot. Marcus Aurelius spoke about stripping away unnecessary layers and returning to your true nature. In modern terms, that means letting go of the persona you think women want and becoming comfortable with being seen as you are. Here's a practical example. Instead of trying to say something impressive on a date, say something honest. If you find something amusing, express it. If you disagree with something, say it respectfully. If you're passionate about something, let that come through naturally. That kind of expression creates emotional texture, and emotional texture is what makes interactions memorable. Let me challenge you with this. If you remove the desire to impress her entirely, what would you actually say? How would you show up differently? Because that version of you, the unfiltered, grounded version, is the one that creates genuine attraction. And here's something many men don't realize. Women are not drawn to perfection. They are drawn to presence. When you're fully present, not calculating your next move, not editing yourself mid-sentence, you create a sense of ease, and ease is rare. Trying to impress creates distance. Revealing yourself creates connection. 5. Silence can say more than words. Most men are uncomfortable with silence. They feel the need to fill it, to keep the conversation going, to avoid any moment that might feel awkward. But what they don't realize is that silence, when used correctly, is one of the most powerful forms of communication. Silence is where emotion settles. It's where tension builds. It's where attraction either grows or fades. When you rush to fill every pause, you remove the opportunity for that natural tension to exist. You turn the interaction into noise instead of connection. And ironically, the more you talk to keep her engaged, the less space she has to feel anything. Now, I'm not telling you to become quiet and withdrawn. That's not the point. The point is to become comfortable with pauses, to allow moments to breathe. Epictetus taught that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Listening is not just about hearing words. It's about observing energy. When you give a woman space to speak, to think, to feel, you're showing a level of confidence that doesn't need constant reinforcement. Imagine this scenario. You say something slightly playful or meaningful, and instead of immediately following it up, you let it sit. You hold eye contact. You stay present. That moment, if you allow it, can carry more weight than anything you could add afterward. Let me ask you something. When you're with a woman, are you actually listening to her, or are you waiting for your turn to speak? Because she knows the difference. Silence also reveals something else, your level of comfort with yourself. If you're uneasy in silence, it suggests that you rely on external stimulation to feel at ease. But when you're comfortable in it, it signals inner stability. And that kind of stability is magnetic. There's a balance here. You don't want to be overly talkative, but you also don't want to disappear. The goal is presence. Speaking when you have something to say and being still when you don't. And here's the deeper truth. Attraction often grows in the spaces between words, not in the words themselves. So stop trying to fill every moment. Let some of them linger. Let her feel them. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Stay with me, because what comes next is where most men either rise into their full power or completely lose themselves without realizing it. 6. You are not afraid to walk away. This is the point most men hear, but don't fully understand, because they interpret it as a tactic instead of a mindset. Walking away is not about creating artificial scarcity or trying to make her chase you. It's about having standards that you actually live by, even when it costs you something. When a man says, "I'm not okay with that," or "that doesn't work for me," and he means it, without raising his voice, without trying to control her reaction, something shifts. Not just in how she sees him, but in how he sees himself, because now his words are backed by action. Too many men tolerate behavior they secretly resent because they're afraid of losing the woman. They stay silent when something bothers them. They compromise on things that matter. And over time, that quiet self-betrayal builds frustration. But what's worse is that it erodes attraction. Not because she wants conflict, but because she senses that you're abandoning your own standards to keep her. Seneca warned about the cost of valuing external things above your own integrity. When your sense of worth becomes tied to whether someone stays or leaves, you lose your center. And once that happens, everything you say starts to carry a subtle fear of loss. Now let's flip it. A man who is willing to walk away doesn't need to threaten it. He doesn't need to announce it. It shows in how he speaks, how he responds, and what he tolerates. When something doesn't align with his values, he addresses it calmly. And if it continues, he removes himself. Not out of anger, but out of respect for himself. Let me ask you something that might be uncomfortable. Are you staying in situations that don't feel right because you genuinely want to, or because you're afraid you won't find better? Because that answer shapes everything. Here's what you need to understand. Women are not drawn to men who never risk losing them. They are drawn to men who are grounded enough to lose them if it means staying true to themselves. That doesn't create distance. It creates respect. And respect is what sustains attraction over time. When your words come from a place of self-respect, they don't need to be loud. They don't need to be repeated. They land once and they're understood. 7. You speak to her emotions, not just her logic. This is where everything comes together and where most men fall short without even realizing it. They communicate in facts, in plans, in surface-level conversation. And while there's nothing wrong with that, it doesn't create emotional engagement. It keeps things neutral, but attraction is not built in neutrality. It's built in feeling. When you speak, the question is not just what am I saying, but what does she feel when I say it? Because a woman might forget the exact words you used, but she will remember how you made her feel in that moment. Now, this doesn't mean you need to become overly emotional or dramatic. In fact, the opposite is true. The most impactful emotional communication is often subtle. It's in the tone, the pacing, the intention behind your words. For example, instead of saying, "I had a busy day," you might say, "Today felt like one of those days where everything tested my patience, but I handled it." Do you see the difference? One is a report, the other is an experience. It gives her something to connect to. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on the importance of perception, how we interpret and express our experiences. When you bring that awareness into your communication, your words stop being flat. They start carrying depth. Here's another layer. When you acknowledge her emotions without trying to fix them, it creates a powerful connection. If she's frustrated, instead of immediately offering solutions, you might say, "I can see why that would bother you." That simple recognition makes her feel understood. And feeling understood is one of the strongest emotional draws there is. Let me challenge you with this. When you talk to a woman, are you focused on delivering information or creating a shared emotional experience? Because those are not the same thing. Men often underestimate how much emotional awareness influences attraction. They think it's about confidence alone, or status, or appearance, but the ability to make a woman feel seen, heard, and emotionally engaged, that's what separates surface-level interest from something deeper. And here's the truth you need to carry with you. Words are not powerful because of their complexity. They are powerful because of the emotion they carry. When your words reflect awareness, presence, and authenticity, they resonate. Now take a step back and look at everything we've covered. None of this is about manipulation. None of this is about saying a magic phrase that overrides her free will. It's about becoming the kind of man whose words naturally carry weight because they come from clarity, self-respect, and emotional intelligence. 8. You make her feel safe, not controlled. There is a difference that many men fail to understand, and that is the difference between making a woman feel safe and making her feel restricted. On the surface, both can look similar, checking in, asking questions, wanting to know where she is, but the intention behind them creates completely opposite emotional reactions. When your words come from a place of control, they carry tension. Questions start to feel like interrogation. Concern starts to feel like pressure. And even if you believe you're just caring, what she feels is a loss of freedom. And the moment a woman feels like her autonomy is being threatened, her instinct is to pull away. Now contrast that with a man who creates emotional safety. He doesn't need to monitor her or manage her behavior. Instead, his presence feels steady, grounded, and non-reactive. When he speaks, there is no hidden agenda, no attempt to limit her, just clarity and calm. For example, instead of saying, "Why didn't you reply earlier?" which carries accusation, you might say, "I figured you were busy, but it's good to hear from you." Do you feel the difference? One creates pressure, the other creates space, and in that space, she relaxes. This is where real strength shows, not in control, but in restraint, not in dominance, but in stability. Epictetus taught that trying to control others is a losing battle because the only true control you have is over yourself. When you internalize that, your communication changes. You stop trying to manage outcomes and you start focusing on how you show up. Let me ask you something honestly. When you express concern or curiosity, is it coming from trust or from fear of losing control? Because she will feel that immediately. A woman is naturally drawn to a man who makes her feel emotionally safe, safe to express herself, safe to be honest, safe to exist without walking on eggshells. And that kind of safety doesn't come from rules or pressure. It comes from your ability to remain composed, even when things don't go exactly how you expect. And here's the deeper truth. When a woman feels safe with you, she opens up without being asked. She invests without being pushed. She stays without being controlled. So don't try to contain her. Don't try to limit her. Become the man whose presence makes her feel safe enough to choose you freely. Attraction isn't built on clever lines or rehearsed phrases. It's built on who you are when you speak, what you tolerate, and how deeply your words align with your actions. If you take anything from this, let it be this. Become a man whose presence makes his words matter, not a man who relies on words to create presence. Work on your standards. Strengthen your mindset. Speak with intention. And when you do, you won't need to ask for attention. It will come naturally. If this gave you a new perspective, subscribe and come back for more. There's a lot more we need to talk about.